Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's the bettingthew crew here with episode 3 for you. We're going to kick things off with a little college basketball because the men behind the desk officially know ball.
Certified ball knowers over here.
Back-to-back, 2-for-2 parlays. We nailed the UCLA South Carolina game. We nailed the Iowa State game this week. We're on a roll. What can we say? So you may want to start listening to what we say. We give out pretty great betting advice.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram at bettingthew.
Keep up.
Midweek parlays pretty much every week.
We're printing money at this point. You're losing money if you're not following us on Instagram. So let's talk about that Iowa State game because it was really the only big game this week. Nothing too exciting happened. We'll get into last night soon, but on Wednesday night we had the in-state rivalry, Cyclones versus Hawkeyes, and we picked Iowa minus 3.5 and under 158.5 points. I think when you see the names Iowa and Iowa State, you expect a lot of points, at least in basketball. And when there's basketball, not in football, obviously, bet the under when they're playing in football. But that is a really high number, 158.5.
Yeah.
I think you see that, you want to hit the over, but too many points.
Yeah, I mean, you see Iowa State, you expect a shootout.
Yeah.
And then the story of it was really Iowa's defense.
Yeah, which is shocking, really shocking. Caitlin Clark didn't look great in the first half.
Came out firing in the second half.
Obviously, was going to pick it up in the second half. She ended up with 20 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, and 5 steals, something like that. A crazy stat line. But even when she wasn't shooting the ball well, Iowa was picking it up with their defense.
Yeah.
They held Iowa State under 60 points, which is a huge problem that they've had against ranked opponents. They've been allowing 70, 80, 90 points.
Yeah.
So to see them hold a top 10 team under 60 points warmed my soul as an Iowa bettor.
As the Iowa drafter.
They made me nervous last week. They really did. But being able to back up Caitlin Clark when she doesn't have a game like she was the best player in the world, and they might need that. I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt the team to have Caitlin Clark have the ball in her hands, but when they can spread it out a little more and not rely solely on her, that's great news for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah. You don't want Caitlin being your whole offense.
Exactly.
You're cool with it being most of it, though.
Yeah, definitely. So, from the good to the bad, some bad news for your Huskies. First of all, they got dominated by Notre Dame.
Kind of got ran by Notre Dame. Kind of a rough pick for
It was
me.
a rough game, rough look for the pick. And then, worse than that, AZ Flood is out 3 to 6 weeks with the injury.
I mean, of course, last week I was just raving about their depth.
Yes.
And now they're just running out of bodies.
Yes, they're without their top 2 players, and you know UConn's roster has good players top to bottom.
Yep.
But you definitely don't want to lose 2 of the best players in the entire country.
Yeah. I mean, they played Princeton last night. They were running basically a 6-man rotation.
Yeah.
So
It's a very short bench for the Huskies right now.
yeah.
AZ Flood will be back, but 3 to 6 weeks without her is big, especially going into Big East Conference play. There's some really good teams in the Big East.
Yeah.
They're hanging on to that number 6 ranking. We'll see if they can avoid another slip, but it's a bit concerning for the Huskies early on.
I mean, I think they got punished a little too much for their loss to Notre Dame. I mean, everyone knows I'm a little biased toward UConn. They're my number 2 pick in our preseason draft, but all year it's just been next woman up. Paige went down, AZ stepped up. AZ's gone. You see Aubrey Griffey step up last night with 29 and 10, a free throw away from a perfect shooting night.
Not bad.
You got Aaliyah Edwards just rolling out of bed a double-double.
Yeah.
I mean,
Easily.
I don't know. I think they could stay in that 3 to 6 range even with AZ Fug gone, and then she'll be back. Really, I don't know if these games really matter. It's going to be a whole different team come tournament time.
Exactly. UConn cares about the games that are played in March.
Exactly.
And
They're just going to stay in the mix.
I think they could be a 1 seed, even if they're not. They're going to be not at full strength without Paige, but they'll be at almost full strength with AZ Fun back.
Full strength for this year.
So, before we get into last night's games, let's talk about another one of your teams that you had in your preseason championship draft that you are not pleased with right now. the University of South Carolina game goes.
South Carolina. I mean, there's no doubting they're the number 1 team in the league.
Right. We know this.
They just infuriate me, man.
They do. Tell me why. Tell me a little bit more.
So, Dawn, I love you, but South Carolina games, I swear to God, they're the slowest games of basketball I've ever watched in my life. Their entire roster seems hesitant to shoot anything that's out of the paint, especially anything early in the shot clock.
Yes.
I feel like every single shot they take is either Aaliyah Boston double teamed in the post or someone driving contested layup. I mean, most people are going to call this discipline.
Yes.
They're going to say it's discipline. I think it's something else entirely. When your whole team is hesitant to shoot and your best player is a post player, it's real easy for that offense to go stagnant.
Absolutely. I think the old heads will call it discipline.
Yeah.
I think the ball knowers, such as you and myself, will say that it's boring to watch and it's dangerous because once you run into another elite center, obviously you have the best one in the nation, but what happens when you play the second best one? And off the top of my head, I don't have my centers ranked, but what happens when you run into another top 5 center?
I mean, you put Aaliyah Edwards out there.
Exactly.
I feel like there's a conversation to be had.
There will likely be a battle of the Aaliyahs at some point.
Yeah.
What happens then when UConn has better shooting and a faster offense?
Exactly.
You never want to doubt Don State.
No,
like
exactly.
you said, they're a really, really, really good team and a really talented roster, but it's not the brand of basketball that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and I see this discipline, throw it in quotes, discipline. It could be a challenge come tournament time.
Yes.
Especially if they match up with one of these just let the ball fly offenses and they're hot, it's going to be a rough matchup, I think.
I would be interested to see them match up with Iowa.
Yeah.
I think that would just be Iowa using about 5 to 10 seconds of the shot clock and South Carolina using the entire thing, and we would see, endurance versus a sprint.
We'll see Iowa have twice as many shot attempts.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
Something ridiculous.
Easily.
I saw a stat, actually. South Carolina, if you take away their one deep threat in Zia Cook, Caitlin Clark has more made threes than their whole team.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. That's relying on one part of your game, and that's dangerous. Okay. Got it all out of your system?
All out of my system.
Wonderful.
I still like him as my one pick, obviously.
Right. Listen.
Can't doubt them.
Listen, that's why I skipped over them. I'd rather lose betting on a fun team, yes, than win betting on a point. I thought I said that wrong. Yes, I'd like to lose with Iowa and they score 1 million points than win on South Carolina beating every team by 20, but all post points. I don't know. Let's get into last night. Last night had a really good slate. A lot of ranked teams getting trouble from unranked teams.
Yeah.
We had number 14 Michigan loses to Toledo, 71-68. We had number 12 Arizona dominated by unranked Kansas, 77-50. Purdue covered plus 3.5 against number 20 Maryland, 77-74. Indiana Penn State game, it wasn't close, but it was closer than it should have been. Indiana only won by 9 points, and they've been blowing everybody out. And this is a Penn State team that's not great. UConn won by just 5 against Princeton. You mentioned that one. Princeton,
juggernauts.
Yeah, exactly. These are some teams that were ranked earlier. Kansas was ranked. Princeton was ranked just a week ago, but still, these are your top 10, your top 25 teams that are really struggling with unranked opponents. And worth mentioning, Ohio State absolutely rolled UNH early on in the day. As a half New Hampshire resident myself, this was shameful for the Wildcats, but that's all right. Ohio State's looking good, and I like them a lot. So which one of these close games, let's ignore that Ohio State game, which one of these other games jumps out at you as impactful?
Well, I don't know if you can't call it close, but Kansas wiping the floor with Arizona.
Yeah.
Arizona, you come in 12th ranked team, and you're going to lose by 27 to an unranked Kansas.
That's shocking. I mean, to to get beat by 3 like Michigan did, where they were down early to Toledo and struggling offensively and came back and got it within 3 but couldn't take the game, like that's not that concerning. It's definitely a concern, especially against a team that's not a mid-major team. But Arizona getting 27 points against Kansas. I mean, it's hard to explain and it's hard to bounce back from. And the Pac-12 is a strong conference, and now you're looking at one of your out-of-conference losses, and it's 27 points to Kansas.
Yeah, that seems like a rough one. I want to jump back to that Ohio State game, Max.
Oh, okay.
Last week, you were calling them a top 2 team.
I was.
Had some harsh words for you.
You brought out the crazy word. You called me crazy.
A little harsh words. Everything that comes out of this man's mouth is gold, and I will never doubt him again.
Bam! That's what I'm talking about. Listen. We know South Carolina's won. Easy enough. I think Ohio State's 2. They're ranked number 3 right now. I've said it over and over again. I love Stanford, but I think Ohio State might be better. And I know this is UNH, right? This is, they scored 36 points, right? Like, this is not a great win, and Ohio State hasn't had great wins. But they're scoring so many points. They are winning by so much. I love this team. And I'm really glad I picked them in my championship draft because this is the kind of team that could make a deep run in March. That might have more longevity than even Iowa. Even other teams that I love. This is a team that's built to last. So I like them as a top 2 team. They'll probably stay as a top 3 team because I don't really see Stanford losing outside of their loss to South Carolina. But yeah.
I think Stanford suffers from the same thing South Carolina does in our eyes.
Yes.
Boring. It's fun to watch, man.
Fun. No, I do not get excited to turn on the Stanford game as much as I love what they've got going on there. Like, these Big Ten teams are really exciting, and obviously a lot of the teams from the Big Ten were the ones that had unexpectedly close games last night. But you're gonna get that when you score a lot of points. Sometimes you're gonna get close games.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Maryland moving forward. So I mentioned a close game against Purdue last night. Purdue's a solid team, but Maryland was looking hot and now kind of questionable. This weekend, on Sunday, this is our only ranked matchup for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
This is not a great slate coming up. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but UConn, Maryland. UConn currently 6, had a rough week. Maryland currently 20, also having a rough week. I think this will be a close game. If it's a blowout in either direction, or even a double-digit win for either team, I'm kind of going to hit the panic button on the team that loses because this is a slippery slope for both teams, and this is a must. The closest thing to a must-win you can have in December.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you there. I don't know if you hit the panic button for UConn yet with a loss here, just because they're down to no one. They're pulling students off the street and saying, "Go suit up."
They're depleted, that's for sure. But definitely Maryland, the team that's looked really good early on, and now it's I'm questioning what they got going down in College Park. This is a home game. This is a get-right game.
Yep.
They need this one. They need this one over UConn. I think it'll be maybe Maryland close, or I could see UConn close as well.
I can see this as an upset. I was looking at it from my walk-off pick, but I was I can't pick UConn 3 straight weeks.
Yeah, no.
I can't do it.
Especially after they let down last week. That's tough. So, I mentioned this week's slate looking rough. I think we'll have a great show next week because next weekend has a lot of good games, but this week it's kind of a lot of duds. But as we saw last night, unranked versus ranked doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
It could be a blowout in completely opposite direction if you're Arizona. So, what's a game or games that you're looking at this week? I did note there are a few big rivalry games. Oregon, Oregon State, USC, UCLA, BYU, Utah. Some big in-state rivalry games. What are you looking at this week as a potential upset?
You're going to touch on it later, so I won't spoil it.
Okay.
I'm looking at that BYU-Utah game.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I'm as big of a fan of Utah as the rankings have them, so...
I think that's going to be an interesting game. Dive more into it later. I'm seeing Iowa has Minnesota. That's another game that they don't want it to be a letdown spot. I think Iowa will win, but it's obviously coming off that big win against Iowa State. It's troublesome.
They better win.
They're up and down a lot. So keep their head on their shoulders, keep their eyes straight, and take care of business in that game. I'm really interested in this UCLA-USC game, the battle for LA. UCLA is ranked number 13, but this is a battle of two great programs within the same city. It's a big conference game. USC is hosting. If I'm looking for an upset, unranked over ranked this week, I like the Trojans over the Bruins because UCLA's had a great early season.
Mm-hmm.
We made some money off them earlier, but I'm interested in USC. I'm interested to see what they can do, and this will be a big, a telling game for the rest of their season, what they can do in an early conference matchup with UCLA.
Yeah.
So, that does it for women's basketball. Let's get into something that I really don't want to talk about. My bracket is dead. Always wear black to a funeral, and I'm dressed accordingly because my bracket is absolutely dead. We've had some great early round action from the volleyball championship. We are down to 8 teams, and man, did I get a lot of this wrong. Let's first talk about what I got wrong. I had Ohio State losing in the second round. They are now in the quarterfinals with a matchup against Texas, who's the number 1 overall seed, and they look like they might be able to take it. Like, they are an incredible team right now. Let me look at this bracket and see their path. They wiped the floor with High Point. That's SC. They wiped the floor with Tennessee State, which was expected. Then they wiped the floor with USC. Then they took down our hottest team in the country.
Yeah.
They felt so smart predicting Minnesota to make a run to the championship. Ohio State destroyed the Gophers. They've only dropped 1 set in 3 matches so far.
Yeah, this is the Ohio State episode, man.
This is really Ohio State's having a moment, man.
Yeah.
What else? Let's see what else I got wrong. I had Kentucky beating San Diego. San Diego's a better team than I thought. I did not give them enough credit. They are now in the quarterfinals with a matchup against Stanford. That's a scary matchup.
Yeah.
But San Diego's only dropped 2 matches. They swept Kentucky. So, who knows? That's a really interesting matchup to watch. And oh my God.
Don't say it. Don't say
The
it.
Nebraska Cornhuskers. I had them winning this whole tournament. I had them in the center spot as the champion of the tournament, and they now have an X over their name.
Say it ain't so.
I said, listen, I said they were going back to Nebraska. I thought they'd be going back to Omaha, but they're going back to Lincoln because they're going home after losing to Oregon in the regionals. This is a really disappointing showing from my projected champion. And Oregon's hot. Oregon is looking fantastic. They beat Loyola Marymount, Arkansas, and now Nebraska. And my championship game is completely dead. I had Minnesota losing to Nebraska. Neither of those teams are even in the quarterfinals. So a rough showing for me. My attention is all about this top right quadrant because I'm all about these Pitt Panthers, baby. They have a matchup with Wisconsin who is so good and who broke my heart in the Final Four last year. Pitt swept Colgate, swept BYU, dropped 1 set to Florida. They have dropped 1 set in this entire tournament, and I'm high on them. I am so excited for this matchup with Wisconsin, the reigning champs. It's time for Pitt to prove who they are against Wisconsin this weekend.
See it.
And I mentioned a couple teams that have dropped 1 set. How about these Louisville Cardinals, dude? They have not dropped a single set yet. They are the 1 seed in this bottom right quadrant. They swept Samford, they swept Purdue, and they swept Oregon. They have not dropped a set, and that is really impressive. There is no other teams on this bracket that have swept all 3 of their first matchups. Stanford's only dropped 1 set. Louisville hasn't dropped even 1. So Louisville is as hot as could be. Oregon is also hot, riding high off that upset over Nebraska. So this is another matchup to watch. We've got some great matchups. I have to say, as much as we've been praising Ohio State, I think they probably have the toughest matchup.
Yeah.
Although now that I say that, they'll probably beat Texas as well because that's how my bracket's been going. But 4 matchups tomorrow, all of them look really good. I'm really excited. My updated, this is on the fly, my updated championship pick, Pittsburgh over Louisville. if I can be a homer, that's what I'm going to be rooting for.
Can they match up?
Listen.
They're on the same side of the bracket, big dog.
No, but
no, they're not?
I think...
Oh, you're right. My bad.
This is great podcasting. They hypothetically could match up. No, they could not. You were right. We're looking at
Louisville semifinals.
Because the semifinals is what it's all about. Once they get past Louisville, it's over.
All that matters, betting the W team locked in on that Pitt-Wisconsin matchup.
Absolutely. That's what we're worried about. One game at a time, one set at a time. So, if you're filling out a bracket, you're doing a little December bracketology, I hope you're doing way better than we are. But, nevertheless, as bad as my bracket is, I haven't ripped it up yet. I might. As bad as my bracket is, I'm having a lot of fun with this volleyball tournament, and I'm really excited for these quarterfinal matchups. So, we are now going to jump into our walk-off segment. Producer Kate, get in here.
So I get the fancy chain on.
I know, that was a one.
You got downgraded.
You're up higher, you're close to the mic. Alright. Let's talk picks. I'm 2-0. Dame is 1-1. Kate, you're 0-2.
Kate, you came back.
I've got something to say. I've been thinking about it. So I had Western Kentucky over Kentucky, right? Because I was talking, it's really hard to come back once you're down 1. I'm starting to think I was just bad at volleyball. Because Kentucky had no problem coming back from being down against Western Kentucky and moving forward and putting me down 0-2. So, with that, I am going with the number 1 ranked pick. For this week, Louisville over Oregon.
Okay.
Even though Max kind of scared me talking about how well of a streak Oregon's been on.
Listen. I like Louisville. They're the team that I'm most scared of as a Pitt fan. I like the pick. You've been taking risks, which I like.
So
this is not the riskiest pick, but that's all right. It's a get right pick.
If I get it wrong, if Oregon comes back, Louisville fails,
yes.
I'm just gonna start thinking it's something with me.
It may be. We will. I guess this is gonna be really telling.
She's the problem.
Maybe you should just stop betting Kentucky teams. We'll see about that. Damon, you got a pick?
I got a pick. As we were talking about Utah, not a huge fan of their ranking.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Wednesday night. Colorado coming to Utah. I think they match up nicely. Utah scores a lot of points. They shoot a lot of threes, make a lot of threes. Colorado doesn't give up as many points. Don't give up a lot of threes. Like the Buffs going into Utah, taking down the Utes.
That's that Coach Prime difference, baby. That's Dion right there. Listen, we have Utah having a really bad week because my pick is BYU to beat Utah. I think Utah's going to get double upset this week if you follow this show. Listen, I agree that Utah is ranked too high, and BYU is a great program. They have had success in recent years, and I like what they're cooking over in Provo. So BYU over Utah this weekend, and Colorado over Utah later this week.
Rough week to be a Utah fan.
Listen, it's not the greatest slate, we told you that much, but go out there, bet with your heart, win some money on women's sports. See ya.